Hi, Acadiana. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker. Welcome to Let's Talk Tropics. This one is a pre-recorded version as it is a Friday, and I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to duck out a little early on this Friday and head over the other side of the Mississippi River to go see my little granddaughter who is turning 4 months old tomorrow. I cannot wait to see her. But we do have a lot to talk about here on Let's Talk Tropics. It is a pretty day across Acadiana, sunshine mixed with clouds. By the time this runs, there might be a couple of isolated showers popping up, but as of this recording, right around the 10 o'clock hour, we're seeing a lot of sunshine out there and some pretty easygoing conditions weather-wise on our area roadways. Well, I have been watching the National Hurricane Center very closely over the last several hours, and we've just gotten the new tropical weather outlook, and there isn't a whole lot of change. One of the things I've been watching is this area of low pressure that's right here off of the southeastern coastline, right off the coast of Florida and Georgia. Reconnaissance aircraft have been out there. They did find a closed center of circulation. They did find winds that would classify it as a tropical depression, but so far we haven't seen the thunderstorms really wrapping around. So they're saying it doesn't qualify just yet, but there still is a chance. And by the time this runs, we might have a tropical depression or a tropical storm. It would be Tropical Depression number 2 or Tropical Storm Barrel. You can see there the names on the left side of your screen. Alberto, the first system already, the name rather, already been used. But we do have another area here. There's a low pressure area that's moving across the Yucatan Peninsula, and it is forecast to push out into the Bay of Campeche, very similar to what Alberto did earlier this week. And there could be another tropical system drifting westward across the Bay of Campeche. Now, this one still might bring some higher than normal tides along the Texas and Louisiana coastline, but there's a fairly big ridge of high pressure that's building in the upper levels here, which should suppress everything down to the south. So as far as rainfall, I just don't think we're going to see quite as much associated with this next system down to the south. So let's go ahead and start with the east coast. You can see this is just a teeny little low pressure area, at least compared to what we were looking at with Alberto, but the low's, well, roughly right about in this area here. And again, that telestrator just doesn't want to work with me. And reconnaissance aircraft have been out there all morning, and they just have not been able to classify it as a tropical system based on most of the thunderstorm activity is out here off to the south of the circulation, and there's not a whole lot up here to the north. But they did find 35-mile-per-hour winds and also a closed center of circulation. So there's the latest position of Invest 92, Disturbance 92, if you will. Again, this is not going to affect a very large area compared to what we saw with Alberto during the week last week. This is very tight, very small, and is going to focus its attention there on the Florida, Georgia, and maybe the Carolina coast. There might even be a little more of a drift toward the west-southwest. So Jacksonville, Savannah, those are the areas that are going to be under the gun, especially the offshore waters. But there could be some decent rains, and then eventually it's going to be turning back out to sea, and we'll have to see what happens. If it gets torn apart by land or if it stays just offshore and kind of scoots back out, it might have a better chance as it moves over the Atlantic Ocean. So let's focus a little bit more on what would be closer to home, and the Gulf of Mexico satellite showing that broad low pressure area here developing right over the Yucatan Peninsula, and it is forecast to go ahead and move off toward the west-northwest into the Bay of Campeche, where we might have a chance for some development there over the Bay of Campeche sometime into tomorrow. The Central American satellite also showing a lot of moisture on the eastern side of this particular low. It's a pretty broad low pressure area here that covers a large area of the Yucatan. So you got the moisture streaming in here from the southeast. You got that kind of riding its way northward over toward the Yucatan. Actually, again, this is that good news, bad news thing. These are the areas here that were very dry all spring long, and now they've been inundated with a tropical system and heavy rains and another tropical system on the way. So fortunately, it is going to help the drought-like conditions in Central America. The only problem is a lot of this heavy rain is coming down in a short period of time, and been causing some flooding there. So let's take a real quick look at some of the computer models and see what they're indicating. And this is the Euro model, and this is for tomorrow morning. And you can see right about there, we've got a low pressure area that has formed and will be moving westward toward the Mexican coastline. Notice not a lot of rain up here to the top because of that big ridge of high pressure that's there, and that's going to keep us keep most of the moisture down here over the Gulf of Mexico. Meanwhile, the GFS model is very similar to that, and we not just look at consistency, but we like to look at a number of different models, and you can see there is a closed low pressure area almost exactly in the same place where the Euro model puts it, and it would be forecast to move into the Mexican coastline as well. And also notice there just isn't a whole lot of moisture moving up toward the Gulf Coast thanks to that blocking ridge of high pressure. And just for fun, we will pull out the Canadian model, which sometimes can be a little more over-aggressive when it comes to developing tropical systems, but very much like the Euro and the GFS, there is a low pressure area there over the western part of the Bay of Campeche, and you also notice there isn't a whole lot of rain coming for the areas along the northern Gulf Coast, as that high pressure ridge again will be blocking that, not just keeping us generally rain free, but also keeping us quite hot over the next several days. Now, the system down to the south will be dealing with some shear. Not quite as much shear, though, as what Alberto was working with. There's some high wind shear to the north. There's a little bit of high wind shear off toward the west, but from the Yucatan going into the Bay of Campeche there and then moving its way off toward the west, there's an area of fairly low wind shear, which could help the system to develop. Again, there's a lot less inhibiting development compared to what we saw with Tropical Storm Alberto. Another thing that is going in its favor are the water temperatures. The last check, we had some water temperatures out here in the western part of the Bay of Campeche, over 30 degrees Celsius. That's 86 to 87 degrees. And really, even over here, and then over here, and then over here, where the forecast track is for this particular system, other than land here, the water temperatures are very conducive for tropical development. We also look at the tropical cyclone heat potential. Although there is a lot more fuel, or let's say premium fuel here south of Cuba and over toward Jamaica, and down into the southern part of the Gulf of Mexico. Remember, this system is right about here and then will develop and move across the Yucatan and then possibly get into the western Gulf. Now, the heat potential isn't quite as high as what you're seeing over the Caribbean, but we've got some pockets here over the western part of the Caribbean that could possibly help to enhance this or for it to tap into. So not only does it have very warm waters, but those warm waters are going quite deep as well. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a new tropical depression develop there over the southern part of the Gulf of Mexico sometime tomorrow or tomorrow night. And then the system that's out off the east coast, if that becomes a tropical system, it's probably going to do it before the afternoon is over, and then we'll go ahead and move inland. So let's go ahead and just take a look at anything else that might be out there. There are a number of tropical waves that are rolling across. Of course, you got all this mess that's associated with what may be working over the Yucatan. But you've got another tropical wave down here, a tropical wave over here. Nothing looking too interesting at this point. And you might even notice out in this area here when the daylight comes on, that brownish there. So there is some Saharan dust and some drier air that's moving across the western part of the Atlantic, and you can see this even better here on the wide range view. A lot of Saharan dust up here. You got your tropical wave there, and then there's yet another one that's coming off of the African coast as we speak. It doesn't look too impressive, but we're starting to see that trend of all of these tropical waves marching their way across the Atlantic Ocean. Normally, you don't see a lot of action out here during the month of June. Sometimes in July, things start to turn on a little bit more. But just like June, I think most of the action is going to stay over the Bay of Campeche, the Western Caribbean, areas around the Bahamas, Southwestern Caribbean as well. And then as you start to push into the month of July, this part of the Caribbean Sea out here to the east starts to open up as well. So really, basically, all the Gulf, all of the Caribbean, and much of the Western Atlantic, you will have potential for development. And then out there in the Atlantic Ocean, that is where things start to really kick in toward the end of July and the early part of August. And just like we talk about each and every day, the frequency of tropical systems, you get a little bit of an uptick here in June, and then it kind of drops off a little bit in July. And then by the time you start to get into August and September, you really see that start to climb all the way toward the peak of September 10th. And then here in Louisiana, sometimes we get a secondary peak during the month of October. So we're just in the beginning of the hurricane season. June usually has 1 or 2 tropical systems develop every year, about 2. And then by the time July runs around, it's still about 1 to 2, so a little bit less. And then August, things really start to ramp up. So I don't think we're going to have to worry too much about the system down to the south, other than maybe some coastal flooding again. As far as any rains, I think most of that's going to stay out of the way thanks to a big blocking ridge of high pressure. And of course, if the East Coast system becomes a tropical depression, I'll go ahead and get that on social media as soon as I possibly can. So I hope you enjoy Let's Talk Tropics. Again, thank you for joining me here on a pre-recorded version rather than the live stream. We'll get back to live streams starting on Monday. But if you like these videos, please push that like button and subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications as well, so you know when the next video drops, whether it's Let's Talk Tropics Live, or if we do Acadiana Weather Today, which is our morning daily forecast, or if there's any severe weather that pops up. Sometimes we pop in that live stream and go wall to wall with severe weather coverage. So if you haven't already turned on those notifications, please do. And if you wouldn't mind, share this page on social media and tell your friends as well to become subscribers. Almost 2,500 of you have subscribed, and this channel is going to be turning 2 months old tomorrow. So I'm super excited to be here in Acadiana giving a weather forecast for Acadiana. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker on this Friday morning. I hope you have a great weekend, and I will see you on Monday.